Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudiraye. Thank you very much. We're reading from Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is, chapter 4, text number 6. So, as we mentioned yesterday, there are 5 verses, 4 which explain Krishna's special features of Krishna's appearance, and the 5th one speaks of the benefit to us of knowing about these special features, specific features of Krishna appearing. So yesterday was the first of the 5, which spoke of Krishna's memory being infallible, being perfect, whenever he appears. It is not diminished by time. The verse today, text 6, speaks of how Krishna's appearances, births or incarnations are spiritual, they are not material. The word that is used in this verse is avyaya atma. Avyaya. Vyaya means something that diminishes or deteriorates or decays. Avyaya means it does not deteriorate, diminish. And the other word is aja. That means, ja means born. So even though Krishna appears, he's actually unborn. So perhaps we can understand these things, perhaps we can't. But even if you can't, you have to at least appreciate there is this idea that Krishna appears but he is unborn. Now you may not understand that. That's okay. We can't expect that we shall have the capacity to understand everything, at least in one go. But this is what this verse mentions. The other point is that whilst Krishna appears, he is nonetheless the supreme lord of all the other living entities. Bhutanam Ishvara. So these are the specific points of this verse, that Krishna's body is spiritual, not material. And interestingly, in the purport, Prabhupada will point out not only Krishna's body is spiritual, but his intelligence is spiritual. Something you can look forward to understanding when we go through the purport. His intelligence does not deteriorate, does not decay, does not develop or suffer any diminution. Aja api san avyayatma is chapter 4, text 6. Mataji? Chapter 4, text 6. Ajopi san avyayatma ish bhutanam ishvarapi san prakritim swam adhisthaya sambhavami atmamayaya. The one other interesting word in this verse is prakritim, in the transcendental form. So we have sometimes a very beginner's knowledge of Sanskrit, where prakriti, material nature, we associate that as a fixed equivalent. However, that's not the shortcoming of the Sanskrit language, it's our shortcoming. Prakriti means nature, and nature means one's possessions, the things one has, or even nature as in identify. How do you identify something? By its nature. I don't want to go into it, but very quickly, how do you identify fire? By heat and light. So Krishna's form is his nature. Very nice. In the transcendental form. It helps to always just believe Prabhupada's word for word, but it's very profound. And if there's any difficulties, our shortcoming only. You will not go wrong with that base understanding. So the other one is Atma Maya. So we also have the fixed idea of Maya being illusion. But actually Maya has a similar meaning as Prakriti, nature. And actually we're going to learn it has another wonderful meaning in the purport. Okay. So the word, actually the way to read it is Prakriti Swam means my own nature or my own form. Swam means mine. Because in the word for word it's two separate words. But really they need to be taken together. Prakriti Swam, my own nature. Although I am unborn and my transcendental body never deteriorates, and although I am the Lord of all living entities, I still appear in every millennium in my original transcendental form. So Krishna's form is with him all the time. Now you see, that's as against us. Our body is not our nature, because it's temporary. It's not nature of the soul even. But Krishna's form is not like ours. Okay, good. So, and that other interesting word is adhishtaya. I'm always situated, adhishta, pratishtha. Something is situated. This is how Krishna is. This is the way he is. So he's telling. But so like this, sambhavami, I appear. Like this I appear. In other words, my appearing is very unique, or let's say different from our experience. Our experience is that everybody's nature is like my own. Changes, we get an ugly beard, so many things, smelly, this, that, so many. So we think form means all that, my experience. Krishna is pointing out, not like your experience, very different. Okay, Prabhupada's purport. The Lord has spoken about the peculiarity of his birth. Although he may appear like an ordinary person, he remembers everything of his many, many past births, whereas the common man cannot remember what he has done even a few hours before. So that's Prabhupada referring to yesterday's verse. Bahuni me janmani aham veda sarvani. I know all my past appearances. If someone is asked, okay, so Srila Prabhupada explains how we forget and Krishna doesn't. And he finishes that argument by saying, and yet men often dare claim to be God or Krishna. One should not be misled by such meaningless claims. This is a good point, because we dredge our memory to remember something few minutes, few hours, few days ago. Krishna doesn't have this difficulty. And yet people declare themselves to be God. So it's very ludicrous. There is no sense. The claim is very foolish. It's outrageous. It is without foundation. So we should not even give anybody the time of day to say such silly things. I mean, if it sounds silly, if somebody on the street claims himself to be President Obama, then how much more ridiculous is it for a person to claim he's God? You would not take a person seriously. And after all, a President Obama or any other president is just a human being. But here we're speaking of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Supreme Lord of all creation. And how can we just, an ordinary person, be equal? And therefore that word Daridra Narayan is very mistaken and very outrageous. You know, it's so without foundation that it should be dismissed without further dwelling on it and contemplating and considering it. Okay, then again the Lord explains His Prakriti or His form. Prakriti means nature as well as Swarupa or one's own form. The Lord says that He appears in His own body. He does not change His body as the common living entity changes from one body to another. The conditioned soul may have one kind of body in the present birth, but he has a different body in the next birth. In the material world, the living entity has no fixed body, but transmigrates from one body to another. So that's the distinction. When Krishna says Prakritim Swam, in other words, my body doesn't undergo any change. I don't acquire a new body. My body is who I am. So Prabhupada explains that a little bit more. The Lord, however, does not do so. Whenever He appears, He does so in the same original body, by His internal potency. So that's the word Atma Mayaya. See, we are subject to, the word Maya means somebody else's influence. We're subject to a force that is not our own. When we become old, it wasn't by our sweet will. You see? Somebody else forced it upon. But Krishna, He has no other influence upon Him other than Himself. Very interesting. Prabhupada is going to elaborate on that a little bit more. In other words, Krishna appears in this material world in His original eternal form with two hands, holding a flute. He appears exactly in His eternal body, uncontaminated by this material world. So He is not influenced. We are. So that's the significance of the word Atma Mayaya. Although He appears in the same transcendental body and is Lord of the universe, it still appears that He takes His birth like an ordinary living entity. So, see, this is where the student of the Gita has to be intelligent. If you're not intelligent, you'll think this is contradiction. He appears in the same transcendental body, but He still appears to take birth. So that means even though He has His own transcendental body, His body allows, by His own sweet will, He can manifest it in different ways. Now, I'm changing my body, but it is not by my sweet will. It is against my will. Against. I never wanted it. I never wanted to be ugly, fat, bald, and so on and so forth. The list is actually very long, because we go to shops looking for solutions to these things, to doctors, precisely because I got a body I did not want. So in Krishna's case, even though He appears to change His body, it is exactly what He wanted to appear. But it is His own. Okay, so we have to be able to reconcile these kind of details. The student of the Gita has to reconcile. And although his body does not deteriorate like a material body, it still appears that Lord Krishna grows from childhood to boyhood and from boyhood to youth. But astonishingly enough, he never ages beyond youth. At the time of the Battle of Kurukshetra, he had many grandchildren at home. Or in other words, he had sufficiently aged by material calculations. Still, he looked just like a young man, 20 or 25 years old. We never see a picture of Krishna in old age because he never grows old like us. Although he is the oldest person in the whole creation, past, present, and future. So now we come to this next section, that not only his body never deteriorates or is fixed, adhisthaya, his intelligence is fixed and doesn't deteriorate. Neither his body nor his intelligence ever deteriorates or changes. Therefore, it is clear that in spite of his being in the material world, he is the same unborn, eternal form of bliss and knowledge, changeless in his transcendental body and intelligence. So this is very important because Krishna doesn't start from being ignorant. See, Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnanam. We are born in the darkness of ignorance. Everybody. But Krishna is not. He doesn't need to come out of ignorance. His intelligence is unaffected. So that means when he appears to take education, he is doing what is called pastimes. They're not needed, they have no role to play, other than the fact that he likes to do it. That's it. There's no other reason. And this is also the subject of the just down the purport. So bear with this. Factually, his appearance and disappearance are like the sun's rising, moving before us, and then disappearing from our eyesight. Now, if you're following in the Bhagavad Gita, focus on the word us and our. In other words, the appearance and disappearance of the sun appears to be rising because it's moving before me. I'm perceiving it. And then it's disappearing is because it's disappeared from my eyes. When the sun is out of sight, we think that the sun is set. And when the sun is before our eyes, we think that the sun is on the horizon. Actually, the sun is always in its fixed position. This is Prabhupada explaining the word adhisthaya. But owing to our defective, insufficient senses, we calculate the appearance and disappearance of the sun in the sky. So Krishna was never changed, even when he appeared or when he disappeared. When he comes, when he goes. But for us, it looked like he came and he went. But he was fixed. The sun is fixed. But I experience sunrise and sunset. Actually the sun, excuse me, I just read that. Okay, and because Lord Krishna's appearance and disappearance are completely different from that of any ordinary common living entity, it is evident that he is eternal, blissful knowledge by his internal potency. And he is never contaminated by material nature. So all this is happening because of internal potency, you could say, his sweet will. It's a very good way to understand. Rather than confusing, oh, there's another entity, but still, no. It's his own sweet will. As against material nature. Material nature is not our sweet will. It's a big obstacle in our lives. Krishna doesn't have that. The Vedas also confirm that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is unborn, yet he still appears to take his birth in multi-manifestations. So this is referring to that phrase in the verse, Aja pi san. Even though Aja is unborn, he appears to take his birth. So now it's going to go into a very nice area. The Vedic supplementary literatures also confirm that though the Lord appears to be taking his birth, he is still without change of body. In the Bhagavatam, he appears before his mother as Narayana, with 4 hands and the decorations of the 6 kinds of full opulences. Now, I did this myself because I do my own study. What Prabhupada says in the Bhagavatam, he appears before his mother as Narayana. The verse is 10th canto, 3rd chapter, text 5. Jaya mane ajane tasmin. In that situation, tasmin, the Supreme Personality of Godhead appeared who is never born. Ajane. Jaya mane. He appeared who is ajane, who is never born. He appeared in that situation. This is in the 10th canto, describing the birth of Lord Krishna. Very nice. And then there's another verse, text 9, which I'll read the whole of it. Tam adbhutam balakam ambujekshanam chaturbhujam shankha gadadi udayudham srivatsalakshmam gala shobhikaustubham pitambaram sandra payoda saubhagam. So these are references, because Prabhupada mentioned in the Bhagavatam, he mentioned that he appears before his mother as Narayan. So this is the reference. The newborn child had very wonderful lotus-like eyes and bore in his 4 hands the 4 weapons, Shankha, Chakra, Gada and Padma. On his chest was the mark of Srivatsa, and on his neck the brilliant Kaustuva gems. Dressed in yellow, his body blackish like a dense cloud, his scattered hair fully grown. So this is Krishna. This is his appearance. This is spiritual. His body is spiritual, his intelligence is spiritual. Now Prabhupada describes the word Maya, and he describes it as mercy. We're familiar with Maya as illusion. This is Maya, meaning Atma Maya. I do this, I appear out of causeless mercy. His appearance in his original eternal form is his causeless mercy, bestowed upon the living entities, so that they can concentrate on the Supreme Lord as he is, and not on a mental concoction or imagination, which the impersonalist wrongly thinks the Lord's form to be. So this is it's a very nice, meditation on the verse. That I come by my own sweet will, but this is escalating the word sweet will to, I come out of compassion for other living entities. I come so that they can know me without speculation. If Krishna doesn't reveal himself, there's no way we can know him. So because he does that, and because we don't deserve it, we don't have a right, we don't have a claim. Now, I've acquired so much of this, you show me. No. There's nothing you can do that qualifies you to see the Lord. So therefore, if the Lord shows himself, it's purely out of his mercy. Atma Maya. By my own compassion. The word Maya or Atma Maya refers to the Lord's causeless mercy, according to the Vishwakosh dictionary. See, Prabhupada is so meticulous, but also very, he doesn't concoct. In other words, he's very faithful to every word. He is very faithful to keeping Bhagavad Gita as it is. But Bhagavad Gita as it is means by the dictionary meaning. So you can't impose. See, our problem is we think Brahman, for example, I'll take one example. Brahman means impersonal. But actually that is not true. Brahman doesn't mean impersonal. It means the absolute truth. Actually Brahman means the great. You know, Prabhupada explained this word great. He said Brahmananda. He was telling Garga Muni. They're brothers, right? You cannot compete with Brahmananda because he's ever expanding. Now if you know Brahmananda Prabhu, he's quite, you cannot compete with his size also. He's very, so Prabhupada, but the word Brahma means expanding, great. But the impersonalists, they have monopolized the word. So that every time you read the word Brahman, even those who are Vaishnavas, they think, oh, impersonal. It does not. It does not. But they have monopolized it. It has become their asset. So we have to become unconditioned. So Prabhupada is not being very cavalier. Oh, you know, Krishna is everything. The word is saying Atma Maya. Maya means both illusion and it also means causeless mercy in the dictionary. And that's a fact. So you see, we should be very conscious that we are students of a consummate scholar. A scholar who is to be respected even amongst scholars. He is so good a scholar. And there are actually some references, or what do they say, reviews written by professors who claim that Prabhupada is an amazing scholar. So it's not just we the followers, you know, you idolize, you just glorify your, you know, your hero worship. Srila Prabhupada stands on his merit as the perfect scholar of Bhagavad Gita. So this is one example, very nice example. Something even a devotee will overlook, Atma Maya, he will say, okay, by my own potency, but by my causeless mercy. The Lord is conscious, fully conscious of all his previous appearances and disappearances. But a common living entity forgets everything about his past body as soon as he gets another body. So that's Srila Prabhupada referring to the previous verse. He is the Lord of all living entities because he performs wonderful and superhuman activities while he is on this earth. It's very interesting logic here. He is the Lord of other living entities. Not because he's powerful, he's strong, he's more, because he performs pastimes which are very beautiful, attractive. So you should meditate on that for a little while. That somebody is the Lord of others because of his pastimes. You see? So again, you see, this defies our conditioned way of thinking. We're conditioned to thinking somebody is a Lord because he can make you do what he wants you to do. No, he is the Lord because he does everything by his sweet will. We cannot do that. And therefore he is the Lord of all of us. Therefore the Lord is always the same. Meaning that he is the absolute truth and that he is without differentiation between his form and self. or between his quality and the body. Now, a question may be raised as to why the Lord appears and disappears in this world. This is explained in the next verse. So, this why the Lord appears. So now we know that his body is spiritual, his intelligence is spiritual, undeteriorated, undecaying, undiminishing, that he remembers all his appearances, that he has Atma Maya, he has causeless mercy on the living entities. He's Aja, he's unborn, Avyayatma, undecaying. So now the question is, why does he come? What's the reason? What's the reason for him to come? Or another question is, why doesn't he stay here perpetually? Why occasion? So that's the subject for tomorrow, next class. I'm tempted to do it, there's 15 minutes, but the problem is it has a lot of details to go through. And if I begin it, then we will very much go over time. You want me to begin it? Okay. Text 7. Chapter 4, text 7. So this is the third verse in the 5 verses that explain Krishna's specific features of his appearance. And this one speaks of when, also why he comes, also when he comes. So both questions are answered. So the answer is when there is dharmasya glani. That's one. And two, when there's a rise of adharma. When there is a discrepancy in religious principles and there's a rise in irreligious principles. Okay. Yada yada hi dharmasya glani bhavati bharata abhyuthanam adharmasya tadatmanam srijamiham. So Krishna is saying, I'm coming yada yada, whenever dharmasya glani. Glani means discrepancy. Glani also means fault. When something's not right, when there's a mistake, a deviation. Now that word deviation is very interesting. So a deviation from religious principles. People misunderstand what is real religious principles. Krishna comes. And uttana means when there's a rise, abhyutthana, predominance of adharma. Okay. Tada, at that time, Krishna is specifying the time when he comes. This is when I come. When this situation is there, I come. Whenever and wherever there is a decline in religious practice, O descendant of Bharata, and a predominant rise of irreligion, at that time I descend myself. Srila Prabhupada said the word Srijami is significant herein. Srijami, see now the word Srijami means born. At that time I'm born. Normal usage. But you see, we're talking about the unborn appearing, because just the verse we read, Aja be son. The Aja is saying, I am now Srijami. So what does that mean? Srijami cannot be used in the sense of creation. Because, according to the previous verse, there is no creation of the Lord's form or body. Aja api san. Since all the forms are eternally existent. Therefore, Srijami means that the Lord manifests himself as he is. Although the Lord appears on schedule, namely at the end of the Dwapara Yuga of the 28th millennium of the 7th Manu in one day of Brahma, he has no obligation to adhere to such rules and regulations because he is completely free to act in many ways at his will. Where was that? The word was Atma Maya, previous verse, right? He therefore appears by his own will, whenever and we can say wherever there is a predominance of irreligiosity and a disappearance of true religion. Principles of religion are laid down in the Vedas. Now Srila Prabhupada, like I said, he's a wonderful teacher. So he doesn't want to leave it to our speculation. What we think are dharmasya. We may have our own concoction. In fact, we will have a concoction. So Prabhupada rectifies that. Principles of religion are laid down in the Vedas. So religion is not something, your idea. It is what is specified in the Vedas. Nothing else. And any discrepancy in the matter of properly executing the rules of the Vedas makes one irreligious. So you see now, that throws the onus on us to know what the Vedas say. You see? But we like to think that, well, we think there is the golden rule of morality. Don't do something to others that you would not like done to yourself. But that's your speculation. You see? For example, I might say, it's the way to do good driving is don't hit somebody. Right. And somebody will say, oh, that's very good. But that's not what the state law says. The state law says keep on the left. It also doesn't say you should hit somebody, but it specifies keep on the left. In India it says keep on the left. You immediately become guilty of breaking the law if you keep on the right. You may say, but by my golden rule I didn't hit anybody. But you've broken the law. So Vedas, that's the same thing with the Vedas. According to you, you didn't harm anybody. But that's not how religious principles work. Religious principles are laid down which we have to follow. They're prescribed. Okay. So you see, most people, they don't like to hear that. Oh, prescribed. Tell me about what, how it makes you feel. How do you feel? You should feel good. That's not the criteria for religious principles. You see? I mean, criminals feel good. They feel good. That's not the basis. The modes of nature make different living entities feel good by different activities. So you will have absolute mayhem if everyone is doing what makes them feel good. Because of course, you see, when the person who gives a philosophy of doing what makes you feel good, he's presupposing everyone is like him. And he may have a certain notion, a so-called nice notion. But that is not how religious principles work. In the Bhagavatam, it is stated that such principles, the Vedic principles, are the laws of the Lord. So the Vedas themselves are what the Lord says. What He says is religious principle. Only the Lord can manufacture a system of religion. I remember when I first read, science of self-realization is very, in case you're not intelligent enough to understand Bhagavad Gita, science of self-realization spells it out. It doesn't leave any room for doubt. And one of the topics in the science of self-realization is this topic about religion is only the Lord manufactures a system of religion. It makes you think, because it's not something you ordinarily understand. You see? There's a vague idea of religion anyway. So when this is like so precise, this is like, okay, right, system of religion is what the Lord, He says. So it takes some doing to get our head around it, to accept it. The Vedas are also accepted as originally spoken by the Lord Himself to Brahma from within His heart. Therefore, the principles of Dharma or religion are the direct orders of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And that's from the 6th canto, 3rd chapter, verse 19. Dharmam tu sakshat bhagavat pranita. These principles are clearly indicated throughout the Bhagavad Gita. The purpose of the Vedas is to establish such principles, meaning these principles given by Krishna, under the order of the Supreme Lord. And the Lord directly orders at the end of the Gita that the highest principle of religion is to surrender unto Him and nothing more. So Srila Prabhupada, God help the person if Prabhupada was the lawyer on the other side. Because his argument is so infallible, so perfect. So people like to have this, they like to indulge in this idea of a morally good life. But what they're referring to is an atheistic life. Sense gratification. But actually, that's not religion. Now people don't like to think, they like to think I'm a religiously minded person when I live a morally good life, when I indulge in my sense gratification. But the essence of a religious life is surrender to Krishna. Without surrender to Krishna, there is no religion. And remind yourself, the person who this is being spoken to is Arjuna. And his religious principle is to kill. Because mostly people associate the idea of religion with a person who is ahimsa, harmless. Always. But the religious person, the model of religious person in the Gita is Arjuna, and he's shooting arrows. He's killing everybody. The Vedic principles push one towards complete surrender unto Him. And whenever such principles are disturbed by the demoniac, the Lord appears. See, now Prabhupada explains, you see, this is when Krishna appears. When the principle of surrender to Krishna is minimized, is disturbed, is confused by some philosophies, then the Lord appears. That's when the Lord takes it upon Himself to rectify the situation. So Prabhupada now gives the example of one glani, one discrepancy, and he speaks of meat eating. From the Bhagavatam we understand that Lord Buddha is the incarnation of Krishna, who appeared when materialism was rampant, and materialists were using the pretext of the authority of the Vedas. Although there are certain restrictive rules and regulations regarding animal sacrifice for particular purposes in the Vedas, people of demonic tendency still took to animal sacrifice without reference to the Vedic principles. Lord Buddha appeared to stop this nonsense and to establish the Vedic principles of non-violence. Therefore, each and every avatar or incarnation of the Lord has a particular mission, and they are all described in the revealed scriptures. No one should be accepted as an avatar unless he is referred to by scriptures. It is not a fact that the Lord appears only on Indian soil. So, this idea, because Krishna is saying yada yada, wherever, he's not saying yada yada Bharat, or the land that will become known as Bharat, because all of the land is the Lord's. He is not the Lord of one geographical place that is being passed in the United Nations in 1947. He is the Lord of all creation. So that means in any planet, anywhere He appears. He can manifest Himself anywhere and everywhere and whenever He desires to appear. So now Srila Prabhupada focuses back on the word dharmasya. In each and every incarnation, He speaks as much about religion as can be understood by the particular people under the particular circumstances. So He's just rectified reconcile different religious systems. Because he's saying that religion was taught to a people that they were capable of understanding, and no more. So, but the mission is the same, to lead people to God consciousness and to obedience to the principles of religion. Sometimes he descends personally, and sometimes he sends his bona fide representative in the form of his son, servant, or himself in some disguise form. But the principles of the Bhagavad Gita are for highly elevated persons. So this is a specific position of the Bhagavad Gita, that it teaches the highest principles of religion. There are what is called sub-religious principles. They take a person who would ordinarily live a life like an animal, and they try to raise him. So that's called sub-religious principles. They add some element that is conducive for becoming God conscious, Krishna conscious. So where they are unclean, it teaches them to be clean. Where they are untruthful, it teaches them to be truthful. Unmerciful, to become merciful. Like that. Sub-religious principles. Then they may become candidates for understanding the higher religious principles as given in the Bhagavad Gita. So the principles of the Bhagavad Gita were spoken to Arjuna because he was highly advanced compared to ordinary persons in other parts of the world. And Prabhupada gives a nice example of mathematics, that 2 plus 2 applies equally to a beginner's mathematics, arithmetic, as well as in higher mathematics. But still there is higher and lower. You can't say that mathematics is only about 2 plus 2. There is more. But for a beginner, that's where it begins. 2 plus 2. In all incarnations of the Lord, therefore, the same principles are taught, but they appear to be or are higher or lower in various circumstances. The higher principles of religion begin with the acceptance of the 4 orders and the 4 stages of social life, as will be explained later in just a few verses. The whole purpose of the mission of incarnations is to arouse Krishna consciousness everywhere. Such consciousness is manifest and non-manifest only under different circumstances. So here's the very clear point of when the higher principles of religion begin. They begin when there is a society that is working around the system of varnashram, which was the subject matter in chapter 3. To do your prescribed duties. To know which varna you belong to, Brahman, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra. To be trained for that and to do it. To know which order of life you are, whether you're brahmachari, grihastha, vanaprastha, sannyas, and to do the befitting. That's when the higher religious principles come into play. Otherwise, one is really struggling with sub-religious principles. Thank you very much. Actually, that wasn't so bad. No, didn't go over time. Are there any questions?